Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Thursday night in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I spent a lot of time today thinking about this particular map, and it shows the time period of August 7th to September 7th, looking at precipitation ranks by climate district. And one of the areas that my eyes immediately drawn to has been part of the Western Corn Belt and the Central Plains, this region right in through here, which has had a very dry kind of finish to the growing season. I'm thinking a lot about the way that this may have affected late grain fill, how this has affected double crop soybeans on top of wheat here, and also what it means if we don't see more precipitation in this area about what winter wheat sowing would look like. We notice that to the south of it, the very heavy rainfall that we saw a couple of weeks ago is still biasing the statistics toward the extremely wet. In fact, down here in the lower Mississippi River Valley, we're talking about a top 3 wettest such time period on record. We've been very dry in the northwest. We've seen a lot of fires, of course, recently because of the strong winds, very dry conditions, and excessive heat. Central Valley of California has also seen a lot of excessive heat, which has been breaking some all-time records. We can also see parts here over in along the East Coast in North Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland that's been dry. Recent heavy rains that came through earlier this week and last weekend have just soaked parts of the Northeast which were in drought. So there's just a lot to be taking in with this particular map and how we're sliding in toward our fall time period. I'd like to show it to you 2 other ways, in fact 3 other ways if I could real quick. And the first is going to be looking at a map that shows the last 30 days in terms of percent of normal precipitation. Now we do expect this area to be dry. It's late summer. It's that time of year that it is quite dry across the west. But there are places here, a big section of Nebraska, Kansas, northern Oklahoma, even this section right over here in parts of Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois that have just missed out on a lot of this. You see a lot of these values that are less than half of normal precipitation during this time period. And that's not to say there aren't other places. I'm just trying to identify those regions that have really struggled. Because when you look at it in terms of percent of normal rainfall and then overlay that with what we see in terms of soil moisture, that area continues to show on this NASA map the very dry stretches that are across parts of the central United States. So we're going to be watching for any rainfall at all to be making it into those areas. A lot of that area is still on the latest drought monitor, which was released this morning. You can see here expansive drought that still stretches through parts of the Western Plains, getting down toward the Red River Valley of the South, although notice this area right here to the south of the Red River Valley of the South, getting over into the lower Mississippi River Valley, is now out of drought. One of the big reasons for that's been some of the recent heavy rain. And looking at the change maps, I'm going to take you back just over the last month, and we can see in that area up to a 4-class improvement. In fact, there are several pockets throughout Texas that have seen major improvements in the drought. Unfortunately, the rains have kind of come on with a lot of flooding to kind of break that drought in that area. All right, so with this kind of as a setup here, let's just get quickly into the next 10 days. This is the 12Z European model. We have a front that's sagging through here, quite sharp front, very cold temperatures behind it. We have a shortwave that's going to sneak right along this frontal boundary and end up maybe somewhere over Iowa and Wisconsin very soon. There is a cutoff low that's forming over Louisiana, and on its eastern side it's drawing up quite a bit of moisture into parts of the southeast and the Appalachian Mountains. And this is going to ride up right here and combine with this shortwave to sit and spin early this weekend over Lake Michigan before moving on off to the north and east. But the latest models did trend drier into this area. Okay, that's an important area to see the drier trend, but they tried to bring in more precipitation, as you'll see in a few moments, into Nebraska and into Kansas. Now, we're also watching a few things going on in the tropics, like we have Hurricane K here that is weakening and is expected to make a turn out to open ocean, but not until it possibly delivers maybe 1 to 3 inches to parts of Southern California, where we do have flood watches in place that could clip parts of Arizona. And some of the moisture from this are going to combine with a trough coming through late in the time period to really expand more moisture into the Intermountain West. So we're going to have to watch for that very carefully. But other than that, we got Hurricane Earl, but it's going to miss, and no other major tropical systems to be discussing. The very wet conditions you see right here are not coming from a tropical cyclone of any sort. So let's grab a quick look at what's going on here with the hurricane season. Just as a reminder, being at the 8th of September, we still have more than half of the hurricane season to continue to go through. The front half, of course, didn't follow climatology like this, but the second half conditions are prime out in the Atlantic and in the Gulf and in the Caribbean. But as it stands, we've got Hurricane Earl moving to the north. We have Danielle that's now post-tropical and moving really far into the North Atlantic. We have two waves we're watching behind it. The lead wave here has given us 70% chance of developing. Likelihood of this turning out to open ocean is relatively high. And then there's been a second wave that's emerged off of Africa that the National Hurricane Center currently has at 30%. And just having a look here at, in fact, let me update this. I think I still have the 0Z around. There we go. Let's go over here to Forecast Genesis. There we are. And if we just take a look at where this is going, there's the lead wave here. The second wave may possibly make it north of the Lesser Antilles. And why this is important is, should it get here and there be some sort of subtropical ridging in place and no large fronts that sweep through, this could just increase the chances. Now this is really far out there in the forecast, more than 10 days out, that we get something that maybe comes over here toward the southeast coast or toward Florida over the Bahamas. And we can't even rule out that it could move over the Greater Antilles and end up in the Gulf, but nothing right now being forecast to be generated in the Gulf. So that kind of brings us up to speed on what's going on in the tropics, at least in the Atlantic. I would like to show you what we're seeing out of K. So K is expected to make this turn, as we said, but a lot of moisture coming into this area, some very heavy rainfall, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So let's go straight to the flow pattern first to diagnose all of this. So we've got this big breaking wave here, which is part of a larger ridge that was over the west. This is what contributed to so much heat over the west. And as it breaks, you end up spinning up this area of low pressure here. Now, this is Earl and this is K, but in the middle, this is non-tropical in origin. And what's going to happen is that there's a shortwave kind of coming around the base. There's actually three of them, 1, 2, and 3. And they're going to work together to kind of pull what is left of this over Lake Michigan right there and combine to a deeper cutoff low. While that happened, okay, Earl is gone, K is fizzling out, delivering moisture, and a ridge starts to rebuild in the west. So this is over the weekend into Monday, and that is cut off from the main flow, which is way up here farther to the north, but it will get pulled over into New England. So it's not fully, stuck. It's getting moved Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And once we get out there at that point, there is a pretty sizable pattern shift. Notice there are troughs in the west, a broader ridge in the mid part of the country. We're going to have to see what that means in terms of precipitation and frost threat. And then getting out here into the 16th, 17th, and 18th, the models have been quite aggressive all week at bringing in this trough that could eject into the plains and provide the support, the lift, to produce a pretty large cyclone in here, just an extratropical cyclone. So we got plenty to be watching over the next 15 days. And I want to make a case here that I'm going to go against the European model's long range to suggest that we could have a more active pattern than it's currently setting up to be. So let me build that case for you. First, let's come back to the high-res stuff. Here's the high-res NAM model. So your eye is probably drawn to K at this point. Watch it carefully. But there is this front slicing through here this evening, and it's bringing in the cooler weather and also the storms that we're seeing all along this front. Even some high-level snow here in parts of the mountains of Wyoming. A lot of scattered storms over the southeast, and again, these scattered storms, watch the kind of the orientation of them. You see how they're kind of orbiting around there? That's where that upper level low is sitting. So let's get through Friday morning into Friday midday. So the front continues to advance, bringing some rain into South Dakota, Minnesota. This has been some very dry ground that's coming over here, while the heaviest rain bands are starting to make their way into Southern California. Again, 1 to 3 inches of rain are possible out of this, maybe more pushing up against the mountains. At this point, though, the upper level low is coming out of parts of Louisiana, pulling the moisture out ahead of it, so some heavier rains for Alabama, getting into Georgia and Florida. As we play through Friday evening, getting into Saturday morning, the front continues to sag. And we're going to watch throughout the day on Saturday for our best chances of rain to kind of push all along this front before it combines with the shortwave out ahead of it, the cutoff that came out of Louisiana, and just sit and spin over parts of Lake Michigan and the eastern Corn Belt before moving into New England. But this rain coming through here could be some of the first rains for a lot of folks, especially in Kansas, in a while. But look on Saturday. It's a lot of heavy rain in Southern California, parts of Nevada and Arizona, where we've got what's left of K kind of moving through this area. So we're going to leave it here on Saturday and flip right over to the new European model run. So let's pick up where that one left off. So this is through Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. So here we are. Now what you're going to see is the front clears, and that's when the upper level low takes over, Sunday into Monday. So the latest model run is to bring quite a bit more moisture into this area, but lose the moisture along the front. There's a lot of dry air behind this, and that's why we don't bring all that moisture pretty far to the south down here. But on Monday, early Monday morning and Sunday night really, we see that low curls around, starts to move through the eastern Great Lakes, and then heads on off toward New England. Now at that point by Wednesday, the moisture that you see here in parts of Nevada, parts of Utah, getting into Idaho, this is leftover moisture actually from K. And it's going to combine with a trough that's here to kind of push a big plume of storms through the Intermountain West. But what I'm watching is coming later in the time period, around the 16th, 17th, and 18th. There appears to be a broad wave that's going to move through the northwest. And this would be a trough of low pressure that could really initiate the development of a low here. Maybe it's pretty far north in the Canadian Prairie. It could be farther to the south, maybe ejecting through Montana or Wyoming. It's still quite difficult to pin down its location at this point. But it does tell me that we're looking at a system about once a week right now. And we would say that would be normal for approach of fall, that you can get a low pressure system forming once a week. Keep that in mind in the next few moments here. But I do want to add this all up. So let's just play this out through the next week, looking at the European models forecast for total precipitation. So that's a week out. There will be a drier slot in through here. Better chances for scattered storms that stretch from the Great Lakes all the way through parts of Kansas, coming out of Iowa and Nebraska. There's K, and the moisture K delivers to the Intermountain West, and out ahead of that upper level low, this is the moisture we see pulling into the southeast up the East Coast. Now just to make a point here, this system that comes in late, it's also showing up in the GFS. So let's just have a quick look at the GFS. So as we play forward through this week and into this weekend, you notice the same components, right? Front slides down, this low meets up with it, and that's where things curl up. So very consistent. We then see the moisture spreading in here next week from what's left over of K. But what I want to point out is that the 16th, 17th, do you see it? There's another system forming in here. It's in the GFS as well. It's also in the European ensemble. By day 10 on the 18th, see the trough feature here? That means several of the ensemble members are picking up on that pattern, and the week 2 precipitation is beginning to reflect it. So now this whole area that you see here showing up with wetter conditions is largely because of the position of this jet stream diving in like this and running up over a ridge before curling around this broader trough in the North Atlantic. So that would lead toward some drier conditions here, but we have questions. Will we get something coming out of the tropics at that point that could offset this? That's always a chance. But I'm still seeing about one system per week going forward in this forecast, and I'm going to explain to you why in just a moment here, okay? First, this is what we're dealing with today. So there's K, and there is Earl. And if you just take this back throughout the day today, this is what was left of those pretty nasty storms yesterday that came out of Oregon and hit Idaho and Montana, some very strong winds. But you can see the wildfire smoke coming out of British Columbia, coming into parts of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and there is, of course, some larger fires that are still going in parts of California. But the excessive heat we've seen here, like the record-breaking temperatures in Sacramento as an example, that's got an expiration date on it. And we're going to take a look at those temperatures in just a few moments. But a very interesting satellite animation here for us on Thursday afternoon. So today we do have the wildfire risk continuing. So this is the current hazards map that stretches from Idaho out into the plains. We do see along the west the excessive heat warnings and the red flag warnings, here along the coast. But these are going to be going away pretty soon. Let's go take a look at where that smoke was going to go first. See, over the next 32 hours, which gets us out there through the day on Friday, do you see the big clearing happening here? This is the front that's coming through and just really knocking temperatures back. It's going to spread a lot of that smoke east, but it also starts to push, watch this at the end, starts to push that smoke back to the east in the Pacific Northwest. So that's not good. To see a change in the trajectory is very important to watch. The smoke down here is getting pulled around the circulation. That is Hurricane K, or the remnants of Hurricane K. So there's a lot going on in this particular map. But let's watch what these temperatures are going to do. So keep an eye on the west coast and watch the heat in the midsection of the country today just start to really fade going into tomorrow. There's Friday, getting into Saturday and Sunday. Now that's a pretty big swath of some cooler air that's coming through, and at this point, looking carefully, we could get some overnight lows this weekend that do get into the 40s here. There will be 30s that will stretch right along the higher elevation here out of Wyoming into Montana, but I do not see an early frost threat at this point coming in with this colder air. Some 40s, but that's about it. The cooler air then continues to move to the east on Monday into Tuesday. That's when that upper level low is sitting here and then starts to move farther to the west. And as you saw, a ridge opens behind it, reintroducing the warmer conditions. But by next Wednesday, the cooler weather in the west, a lot of this is cloud cover driven, and the next trough that's trying to come into the west. And that's where this kind of story really kind of reaches a point here. If we look at the next 15 days on temperatures, this is a 5-day sliding window. What we see is the excessive heat backing off in the west, warmer than normal conditions in the midsection of the country, and that's where they tend to stay. What I don't see is any indication of a linking up with really cold air that could come down and give us a very early frost at this point for the midsection of the United States. And I want to make a point of understanding why that is, or helping just to make a clarifying point. The first thing is this. I just took us out there to Monday the 19th. And if you look down on the North Pole, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate trough features. So we could call this out here kind of a wave number or a wave pattern 5. It's got 5 troughs. And when you have a lot of short waves, the pattern tends to progress east, which means we deliver one of these things through the northern United States about once a week. That's why I think we're going to see more routine weather systems than the long-range European, which I'm about to show you alludes to. The second thing is why I'm not so concerned about the risk of an early frost is, to get early frost, you got to really push big ridges up into Alaska and British Columbia. And then the jet stream has to dive into the midsection of the country, get pulled around a broader trough that sits here over the Hudson Bay, and then really rebound into a big ridge that goes up toward Greenland. And that highly amplified pattern isn't being really well advertised at this point. So that's why I just say I don't think there's going to be any sort of a mid-September early frost hit the northern plains of the United States. We could get some cool nights, but just nothing devastating that could do something like this. The pattern's just not there. And also with this pattern having 5 waves to it, we just don't see any blocking. No high over low, no omega blocks really showing up. And that's why I think the pattern's going to stay open and moving a bit more than what the models are suggesting. So here's what the models are suggesting. Let's just blow this out to a 45-day forecast. That's what I want to do. So this is now all the way to October 24th. Now, we will likely see in between these kind of once-a-week systems better harvest windows opening up in the midsection of the country. Same thing for parts of New England. So we could see better harvest windows opening up here. Why I'm not commenting about the South is because even though you see very dry conditions being forecast from eastern Texas into the Mid-South, we cannot rely on this because it's tropical season, and it would just take one system that's not forecast yet to come into this area and completely upset that forecast. But I'm expecting an open pattern with, about a system a week that kind of follows some trajectory like this, comes in the northwest and moves across the country. Now, the model is very biased right now toward the warmth we're currently seeing, but you'll just notice that when you even look out there for the next 45 days, it's not indicating anything close to having big intrusions of cold air early. Again, when we get into October and late September, that's a different conversation to have, but we're not there yet. So we'll just say that even though this goes out so far, most of the warmth you're seeing here is really in the first 30 days of this forecast. Okay, I've been also looking at the CFSV2 model. It's actually more supportive of the kind of the one system a week rule that I just brought up here with this open pattern, more so than the European. But I want to kind of expand this into a little bit different discussion here by talking again about our ocean temperatures. Two things that really stand out to me about this, okay? The La Niña is still very much in control. Okay, you do see a lot of cold water here, but there's a lot of warm water north. These two areas, I think they're really affecting the position of the northern jet stream. I think that it's going to be picking up quite a bit of momentum very soon, though, because of some changes that are actually happening with La Niña. So to kind of get tabs on what this particular La Niña is doing, I want to show you this. We've seen the ocean temperatures bottom back out around 1 degree Celsius below normal. So that's an indicator that the recent trade winds have been very strong and have helped water temperatures really cool off. It usually takes a little bit of time, though, for this reaction to be seen. What I really want to discuss is what we talked about on Monday. We do see stronger trade winds still generally in place, But there's a bit of a change up in the Indian Ocean. Notice how we no longer have just the solid red stripe that runs through here, which would say strong westerly wind bursts. In fact, we even see a bit of a mix, even a little bit of an easterly wind burst at times, which is the normal direction the trades go. So I would just take this and say that in the near term, we're seeing a little bit of a fluctuation in the La Niña. Could this help with my argument about how the North Pacific jet is picking up some momentum, delivering more frequent systems? It's part of it. I can't blame all of it on that. But we do know that our global angular momentum has come out of the basement here. It has now returned back above normal. Part of that has been because of an increase in the southern hemisphere. But notice right in through here, we're no longer seeing these blue-green colors representing low momentum. So I think that the Pacific jet is going to extend itself a bit. It's going to pick up some momentum, stay unblocked, and deliver more systems. That's kind of the main idea behind what I'm trying to share with you here. Now from here, so again, that was just my explanation on why I think that the European forecast is a bit overly dry, and it's maybe given us the illusion. Sorry, let's look at it again. That these areas are not going to see systems. Just to make a point again, a lot of what you see here, this is all coming in the next week, so that's why it's heavily biased there. But I still think that after this, we're going to have about a system a week at this point. Now, let's talk about the rest of fall. We brought this up on Monday. The latest update for October, November, December from the Climate Prediction Center anchors the most dry air down here in the lower Mississippi River Valley into the southern plains. They're actually calling for an earlier start to the Pacific Northwest wet season. That's echoed in the NMME outlook for October, November, December. They've got the same areas that's dry, and they've also got this region up here showing above average precipitation. The European model has bought into this as well. Now remember, these 2 months though have tropical activities, so we don't know if we're going to get a big system to come through here. But what this means is if La Niña continues to kind of exert its control on the pattern, sure, this is what we would get. This would be the overall flow pattern for our fall time period, October, November, and December. Big questions loom for California into the Northwest. And a lot of those questions are going to be about whether or not this La Niña has the staying power. Now, I've made an argument that I don't think it does. I think once we get past the middle of winter, really not the middle of winter, the start of the new year, that's really the beginning of winter, La Niña and its influence could really begin to let go, and we're going to watch these subseasonal factors take over. At least that's the analysis that I'm putting together here. But I would like to point out that the fall forecast for October, November, December, when you correlate it with La Niña, the cold water here, these warmer colors would represent drier conditions and the blue colors would represent wetter. So do you notice that the analogs here, really this isn't an analog, this is a correlation map with the European model, the National Multi-Model Ensemble, and the CPC all line up with that same kind of line of thinking. Again, my concern is what happens if the La Niña lets go midway through. Now from here, I want to finish this up with a longer range discussion, and I want to start with South America. So we're going to do a bit of international weather here. The newest update from the CPC, this goes for the next 46 days, European model, not CPC, is it's continued to keep that wetter bias, the wetter conditions in this particular area, which would mean a fast start to their growing season and a quick planting. It has also kept the drier conditions farther to the south, and it's actually trended weather farther to the north. We've got better rains coming through here just in the next week, so that's going to be an important component to this. I would also like to point out a couple other areas. Australia, since we're south of the equator here, continues to see above average precipitation for its spring. But southern China, very, very dry, continuing in the forecast. While India has a major late surge kind of here in the monsoon. So you can just see all that moisture coming up here. Calling for better than 5 inches more than normal could be very disruptive for agriculture. Now, given that we see this pattern again in South America, I just want to make a point to tell you that this is very typical of La Niña to bring a quicker start to the monsoon here and be drier to the south. So it seems as though the model is just hanging on to that La Niña bias going forward. It is going to start raining in the next 15 days here over in Rondônia and parts of Mato Grosso, so they might get a quick go of it. And as I said, wetter conditions farther to the south. But something to keep an eye on is winter. And the latest forecast for winter is suggesting cold in the northwest. Near normal to colder than normal this winter for the plains and Midwest, with the warmest locations being the Four Corner states and up the East Coast out of the south. This is a very La Niña look to this forecast. And what I want to complement this with is I want to tell you that some of the new data from the long-range models have put much of Europe back into the near normal category. And what this could possibly suggest is that this upcoming winter across parts of Europe could see several rounds of some pretty cold air that could come through. And there's just some early indicators that Europe could be dealing with a pretty adverse winter, bringing in quite a bit of colder air at times. So we have a lot to be kind of keeping our eyes on here as we go forward, but I want to give you some of this preliminary winter analysis as it kind of shakes up here. So what I'll do is I'll stop it there, and I'll keep an eye on this and report back to you again on Monday. Appreciate your attention today. Thanks.